Last week, we reported the bombshell news that Robert Wagner has been named a person of interest in the death of his wife, legendary actress Natalie Wood.
Natalie Wood, a Hollywood tragedy re-examined, and the man at the center of it. All in a stunning twist to a decades-old mystery, actor Robert Wagner has officially been named a person of interest in the death of his wife, Hollywood icon Natalie Wood. Her passing, long shrouded in mystery and ruled a tragic accident, is now under renewed scrutiny as disturbing evidence begins to surface. What really happened that night aboard the Splendor, and why has it taken over 4 decades for these questions to be asked, let alone answered? The contradictions are impossible to ignore. Witnesses say they heard screams piercing the dark waters off Catalina Island. Wagner's version of events shifted over time. Medical reports revealed bruises inconsistent with the official timeline. And perhaps most chilling, a lifetime of secrets Natalie Wood carried in silence. Secrets that may now be speaking louder than ever before. Why did the original investigation fizzle so quickly? Why were influential Hollywood figures seemingly protected from the start? And why, after 40 long years, are insiders whispering that the truth may finally be emerging, and that it's far darker than anyone dared imagine? This is no longer just a cold case, it's a reckoning. The golden girl of Hollywood's silver screen. Natalie Wood wasn't just another actress. She was America's sweetheart, glowing on red carpets, gracing magazine covers, and enchanting millions in darkened theaters. But behind the smile and cinematic sparkle, Natalie lived a life punctuated by fear, manipulation, and trauma. Her sudden death at 43 shocked a nation that had never truly known the woman behind the stardom. As the 40th anniversary of her death approaches, a fresh spotlight is being cast on the night she disappeared. And with that spotlight comes a rush of unsettling questions. Why did she harbor a deep, lifelong fear of dark water? Why did she once confide to a friend that she thought her husband might kill her? And why, after years of speculation, books, and hushed rumors, has no one ever truly been held responsible? The making of a star, and the breaking of a child born, Natalia Nikolaevna Zakharenko, on July 20th, 1938 in San Francisco. Natalie was the daughter of Russian immigrants Maria and Nikolai. Fleeing the turbulence of their homeland, the family sought peace in America, but found only hardship. Convinced that her daughter's beauty and charm could lift them from poverty, Maria pushed Natalie into the spotlight before she could even read. By the time Natalie turned 4, she was appearing in films, but it was no fairy tale. On one early set, when the young actress couldn't muster tears on cue, her mother ripped apart a live butterfly in front of her, traumatizing the child into the kind of raw emotion that directors demanded. It was a cruel act that would forever color Natalie's understanding of love, performance, and sacrifice. Despite these horrors, Natalie's screen presence was undeniable. She was not merely adorable, she possessed a rare depth that conveyed vulnerability and strength, a combination that would catapult her to stardom. Her breakthrough came in Miracle on 34th Street at the age of 8, a role that transformed her into a household name. But for every smiling photo op, there were endless hours on set, punishing schedules, and an education sacrificed at the altar of fame. Natalie wasn't just growing up on screen. She was being shaped, sometimes cruelly, by an industry that took more than it ever gave. From child star to serious actress, Natalie spent much of her adolescence trying to escape the label of child star. That evolution came to fruition with Rebel Without a Cause, opposite James Dean. Her portrayal of Judy, a teenager navigating alienation, heartache, and rebellion, was so authentic it earned her an Oscar nomination at just 17. The performance marked her transition from child prodigy to serious dramatic talent. Hollywood took notice. Natalie followed with West Side Story and Splendor in the Grass, both emotionally searing performances that proved her range. She wasn't just acting, she was excavating something personal, intimate, and at times painful. To the public, she had it all: talent, beauty, adoration, and a headline-making romance. Her relationship with actor Robert Wagner was the stuff of studio-era legend. She had once told her mother she'd marry him someday, and she did. Theirs was a union celebrated in the press as a perfect love story. But those who knew Natalie understood the truth was far more complex. The illusion of the perfect life. What the magazines didn't show was the control that shadowed Natalie's life. From her mother's grip on her childhood to the studio's stranglehold over her image, Natalie was never truly free. And behind the scenes, her relationship with Wagner was marked by volatility, jealousy, and control. She worked herself to exhaustion, often filming 6 days a week, 12 hours a day. She was typecast, managed, polished, and privately, she was terrified. Her fear of water, for instance, was more than just a phobia. It was rooted in something deeper, something psychological. Friends recall her panic around dark waters, especially at night. That fear, paired with her cryptic comments about Wagner's temper, now carry a chilling weight. A night that changed everything. On November 29, 1981, Natalie Wood vanished from the yacht Splendor, anchored off Catalina Island. On board that night, Robert Wagner, actor Christopher Walken, and the boat's captain. By morning, Natalie's body was found floating in the water, bruised and lifeless. The official cause: accidental drowning. But many never believed it. In the years since, the inconsistencies have only grown more glaring. The autopsy, the bruises, the silence, the changing stories, and now a reclassification. Natalie's death is no longer just a tragedy. It's officially deemed suspicious. Robert Wagner's status as a person of interest may be long overdue, but for Natalie's family and those who never stopped asking questions, it's a crack in the wall of silence that has surrounded this case for decades. The legacy she left behind. Natalie Wood was more than an actress. She was a symbol of a bygone Hollywood, where beauty masked trauma and fame often came at a staggering cost. Her life was extraordinary, but her death and the decades of silence that followed demand more than admiration. They demand answers. Because Natalie Wood didn't just vanish into the night. She was lost in plain sight by an industry that saw too much, said too little, and let the truth sink beneath the surface. And now, finally, the tide may be turning. Fear, prophecy, and the shadow of death. Even in adulthood, with fame and accolades under her belt, Natalie Wood remained confined, boxed in not by talent, but by expectation. Typecast, scrutinized, and revered for an image she never fully controlled, she longed for artistic autonomy and a private life unencumbered by the glare of celebrity. But in Hollywood, and within her own inner circle, such freedom proved elusive. One of the most haunting and often overlooked elements of Natalie's story was her visceral fear of dark water. This wasn't the product of on-set trauma or a childhood mishap. It was far more chilling. From a young age, Natalie's mother, Maria, told her that a psychic had once predicted she would die by drowning. The prophecy clung to her like a shadow. Natalie carried that fear through her entire life. She avoided swimming. She never truly learned to navigate a boat. Open water terrified her, not just emotionally, but spiritually. And yet, it was on a yacht, adrift on black waves in the dead of night, that she would meet her end, under circumstances eerily aligned with the vision that had stalked her since childhood. New testimonies, new turmoil. In a stunning turn of events, the case has been jolted back into the spotlight. More than 4 decades after Natalie Wood's mysterious death, new witnesses have stepped forward with allegations that threaten to upend everything we thought we knew. 2 individuals, both previously unheard from in any official capacity, have now provided chilling accounts of what they say happened that fateful night in 1981 aboard the Splendor. Among them is a man who was just 17 at the time, working as a deckhand on a nearby boat. For years, his story was brushed aside, but now he is breaking his silence, and what he describes is deeply unsettling. He recalls hearing raised voices, what sounded like a violent argument, followed by the unmistakable cries of a woman in distress. There was shouting, a crash, something knocked over, and then silence. An eerie, unnatural silence that he has never forgotten. The voices demanding justice, adding gravity to these new claims, is Marty Ruley, an investigative author whose forthcoming exposé, Natalie Wood and the Devil She Knew, is already stirring public and legal momentum. Ruley has spent years tracking inconsistencies in the original investigation and believes that the time for a grand jury is now. Her book outlines how Natalie's final hours point to more than misadventure. They point to a cover-up. A grand jury could compel witnesses to testify under oath for the first time, an act of legal force that, incredibly, has never been pursued in this case. According to Ruley, it's not just about Natalie anymore. It's about the integrity of the justice system itself. Perhaps the most spine-tingling account comes from Marilyn Wayne, a woman who was anchored just yards away from the splendor that night. Marilyn claims she heard a woman crying out in desperation, again and again. "Help me, please! I'm drowning!" The cries went unanswered. But what makes Marilyn's recollection even more haunting is a confession Natalie allegedly made to her years prior. "Wagner is going to kill me." If this statement is authentic, it reshapes everything. It transforms Natalie's death from a tragic accident into something more sinister. It suggests that her fear of the water was matched, if not surpassed, by her fear of the man she called her husband. Robert Wagner, beloved icon or untouchable suspect? The most pressing question remains: how has Robert Wagner, once America's leading man, remained untouched by the weight of these allegations? Named a person of interest by the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department back in 2018, Wagner has never faced formal charges. He has also refused to cooperate with investigators, declining interviews, dodging follow-ups, and withholding clarity about what occurred in those pivotal hours. Lieutenant John Corina, one of the lead investigators, has publicly challenged Wagner's timeline, noting it conflicts with multiple eyewitness accounts. "His story doesn't add up," Corina said bluntly. And yet, Wagner remains insulated by fame, by time, and perhaps by the privilege that long protected Hollywood royalty. The 6-hour silence that could have saved her. Then there is the timeline, staggering in its delay. Natalie Wood was last seen around 11 p.m., yet the Coast Guard wasn't contacted until nearly 3:30 a.m. Even worse, Roger Smith, the captain of the rescue vessel that eventually recovered her body, has stated he wasn't summoned until 5:11 a.m. 6 hours. In any drowning scenario, response time is critical. Hypothermia, exhaustion, panic, all combine to shorten survival chances with each passing minute. Why was the call for help delayed for so long? Who made that decision? And more importantly, who didn't? Every second lost that night was a second Natalie could have been saved. The unanswered questions that refused to die. Natalie Wood's story is more than a Hollywood mystery. It is a tale of beauty, prophecy, silence, and power. It is about a woman who lit up the screen but died in darkness, about a culture that adored her but failed to protect her. And it is about a man, still living, whose presence on that boat has never been adequately explained. As new voices step forward and a reckoning inches closer, the world watches with a single question in mind. Will Natalie Wood finally get justice? Or will Hollywood once again bury the truth beneath the waves? Autopsy clues and a trail of questions. The mystery deepened with the results of Natalie Wood's autopsy. At the time of her death, her blood alcohol level measured 0.14%, well above the legal limit. Traces of painkillers and motion sickness medication were also found in her system, substances that would have severely impaired her motor skills, judgment, and ability to stay afloat. But it wasn't the toxicology report that raised the most red flags. It was the bruising. Multiple contusions were discovered on her arms, legs, and even her face, injuries that forensic specialists argue are inconsistent with a simple accidental fall into the water. These were not the kinds of bruises one would expect from slipping off a deck. They suggested something more violent, something more intentional. In 2012, the Los Angeles County Coroner's Office updated Natalie's death certificate to reflect those doubts, amending the cause of death to drowning and other undetermined factors. It was a quiet but monumental shift, an official acknowledgement that foul play could not be ruled out. A fantasy marriage built on fragile foundations. Long before the tragedy, Natalie Wood's relationship with Robert Wagner was already one of Hollywood's most talked-about romances, and one of its most misunderstood. The fairy tale, as it was first told, began when Natalie was just 10 years old. She saw a photograph of Wagner and told her mother prophetically, "I'm going to marry him someday." That wish became reality when the two tied the knot on December 28, 1957, in a glittering ceremony in Scottsdale, Arizona. To the outside world, they were picture perfect, young, beautiful, and wildly talented, Hollywood's golden couple. But behind the glitz, the marriage was unraveling. Natalie's career soared in the late 1950s and early 60s. She was collecting Oscar nominations and headlining prestige pictures. Wagner, while well-regarded, remained primarily known as a television actor. The disparity didn't go unnoticed. Friends and insiders whispered about the tension growing between them, fueled by jealousy, insecurity, and the unforgiving glare of the spotlight. Some said Wagner resented the attention Natalie received from male co-stars. Others claimed he became increasingly possessive, uncomfortable with her status as a major box office draw and romantic symbol. Then came the most explosive rumor of all, the secret that may have shattered it all. According to several unverified but persistent accounts, Natalie once walked in on Wagner in an intimate situation with another man. If true, this incident would have been considered scandalous in 1962's Hollywood, an industry still deeply entrenched in conservative values and public image control. Whether or not the details were entirely accurate, the impact was real. The couple separated just months later, and by April 1962, their divorce was finalized. Natalie moved on, but peace remained elusive. She had a notoriously tempestuous romance with actor Warren Beatty, intense, passionate, and fraught with volatility. Later, she married British producer Richard Gregson. They had a daughter, Natasha, in 1970. But the marriage imploded when Natalie discovered Gregson had been unfaithful, with none other than her personal secretary. It was a devastating blow that reinforced a painful pattern. Love, for Natalie, often came hand in hand with betrayal. A return to familiar waters and old ghosts. In 1972, something unexpected happened. Nearly a decade after their bitter split, Natalie Wood and Robert Wagner found their way back to each other. Both were single again. Both had endured the scars of failed relationships. To friends and family, the reconciliation was as shocking as it was swift. Some believed Natalie still loved Wagner, that despite everything, she saw in him a kind of kindred spirit. Others believed she simply wanted to recapture the illusion of safety and belonging that once defined their early days. And some feared it was something darker, that Natalie, weary from heartbreak, had stopped believing happiness was possible outside of what she already knew, even if what she knew came with risk. They remarried quietly on July 16, 1972, aboard a yacht off the coast of Malibu. This time there were no flashing cameras, no studio press releases. Just the ocean, the very element Natalie feared most, surrounding them on all sides. To some, it was a romantic gesture. To others, it felt like foreshadowing. Together, they blended their families. Wagner became stepfather to Natasha. In 1974, the couple welcomed their own daughter, Courtney. For a brief moment, it looked like the past was behind them. Smiles returned. Public appearances sparkled again. But those closest to them saw signs that history was repeating itself. The second marriage. Beauty, control, and unspoken tensions. Friends who witnessed the couple's second marriage say the red flags never truly disappeared. The relationship, they said, was marked by moments of warmth, but also by simmering control and unspoken tension. Wagner, once again in Natalie's shadow professionally, often seemed agitated when she stepped into the spotlight. Natalie, ever the perfectionist, tried to maintain the illusion, but cracks were forming beneath the surface. At gatherings, close friends said Wagner could be possessive. At home, he reportedly kept tight control over finances and decisions. And while Natalie worked hard to present a united front, some noticed that her vibrant energy had dulled slightly, that she was quieter, more careful. She still feared the water. She still remembered the prophecy. And she still, it seems, was afraid of what might happen if the wrong secrets ever surfaced. A marriage in conflict, and a daughter caught in the middle. As Natalie Wood sought new professional challenges in her later years, the pressures within her marriage once again surfaced. She wanted to grow as an actress, take on demanding, meaningful roles. But Robert Wagner, by many accounts, wished for something else, a retreat from the spotlight, a quieter domestic life. Friends noted how Wagner's possessiveness flared up, particularly when Natalie spent time with male colleagues. Her professional ambition and close working relationships with co-stars made Wagner uneasy, and those tensions often played out behind closed doors, though not always quietly. Arguments, according to witnesses, could be heated, emotional, even explosive. But like much of Hollywood, what was visible from the outside was only a fraction of the truth. One of the most intimate and conflicted voices in this saga belongs to Natalie's daughter, Natasha Gregson Wagner. In recent years, Natasha has worked tirelessly to honor her mother's legacy. In 2020, she co-produced the HBO documentary Natalie Wood, What Remains Behind, an earnest, moving portrait of her mother's life and untimely death. In the film, Natasha opens up about her complicated relationship with Wagner, the man who raised her after her biological father, Richard Gregson, left. She remembers Wagner as a deeply involved and loving stepfather, supportive, present, devoted. Yet even Natasha admits she grapples with the difficult duality. How could the man who nurtured her childhood be the same man who remains a central figure in one of Hollywood's most disturbing cold cases? The psychology of control. These contradictions are not uncommon, say experts on domestic abuse and relationship trauma. Not all harmful relationships are visibly violent or abusive. Control, manipulation, and emotional volatility can be deeply concealed, normalized by both partners over time. It's entirely possible that Natalie, despite fears and frictions, wanted to believe, needed to believe, that her second chance with Wagner could succeed. But that possibility leads to a chilling question. Was this second marriage a rekindled love story, or a dangerous return to a man whose influence had long haunted her? The truth matters, not just for Natalie's memory, but for understanding what happened the night she died. If their relationship had been built on trust and peace, then perhaps her death was the tragic accident it was once declared. But if jealousy, tension, and fear lingered beneath the surface, then her final night takes on a far more sinister tone. November 27, 1981, timeline of a tragedy. The holiday weekend was supposed to be a retreat. A break from the demands of filming Brainstorm, the science fiction film Natalie Wood was working on with actor Christopher Walken. The group, Natalie, Wagner, Walken, and yacht captain Dennis Davern, boarded the Splendor and headed for Catalina Island. They anchored near Avalon, but the weather was rough. Cold winds whipped through the harbor, the waters choppy and uninviting. Seeking shelter and solitude, Wagner moved the yacht to Two Harbors, a more secluded spot on the island. It would be a fateful decision. That night, the group dined ashore at Doug's Harbor Reef, a popular restaurant known for its seafood and celebrity sightings. Staff and patrons recall a lively but tense meal. Wine, champagne, and cocktails flowed freely. By the time they left, it was clear the party had overindulged. But what stands out most from that evening are the arguments. Wagner and Walken clashed, publicly and passionately. Walken reportedly encouraged Natalie to pursue her career, to remain independent and creatively fulfilled. Wagner, in contrast, bristled at the idea. He wanted Natalie to slow down, to prioritize their marriage and home life. The friction was palpable. That tension followed them back to the splendor. The breaking point on board. What happened next has become the centerpiece of decades of speculation and inquiry. Dennis Davern, the yacht's captain, has since gone on record with his version of events. He describes a heated confrontation between Wagner and Walken. He recalls Wagner growing more agitated, more jealous, suspecting that Walken's interest in Natalie went beyond friendship. According to Davern, Wagner's rage boiled over. At one point, he allegedly smashed a wine bottle on the yacht's table, a moment Wagner himself later confirmed in interviews. But what followed remains disturbingly unclear. Wagner insists that Natalie retired to her cabin early. He later went to check on her, he claims, and found her missing. But Davern has painted a different, far darker picture, one in which Wagner was aware Natalie had disappeared but chose not to act. Davern alleges that Wagner explicitly told him not to turn on the searchlights, not to wake the other boats, and not to call for help. Hours passed. The ocean grew colder. Natalie, if she was alive, was alone in the water, with no one searching for her. A night of delays and a life lost. By the time the Coast Guard was notified, it was after 3:30 a.m., nearly 5 hours since anyone last saw Natalie. Roger Smith, the captain of the rescue boat that eventually found her body, didn't receive a call until after 5 a.m. In a case of drowning, every minute is critical. Cold water shocks the body, impairing function within minutes. And yet hours ticked by before help was summoned. Who made the decision to wait, and why? A cry for help that went unanswered. In any drowning case, time is the most precious resource. The longer someone remains in cold water, the slimmer their chances of survival. And yet, on the night Natalie Wood vanished, there was a chilling, unexplained delay, over 4 hours between the time she was last seen and when the Coast Guard was finally contacted. Why? This question continues to haunt those who believe Natalie's death was far more than a tragic accident. Around midnight, on a boat anchored nearby, John Payne and Marilyn Wayne were settling in for the night. But their calm was shattered by a sound they would never forget. A woman's voice crying out in the dark, "Help me! Someone, please help me! I'm drowning!" The voice was desperate, repeating, panicked. Marilyn shook John awake. Together they listened, trying to locate the source of the screams. Then came another voice, a man's, calm and detached, saying simply, "Okay, honey." And then, nothing. The screaming stopped. The next morning, deeply shaken, Marilyn attempted to report what she had heard. But no call to testify ever came. Her account, like so many others, seemed to vanish into the sea of silence surrounding Natalie's death. By the time authorities were contacted around 3:30 a.m., it was far too late. Natalie's body was found floating in the water hours later, clothed in a nightgown, socks, and a down jacket. Her dinghy, initially thought to be the key to a simple explanation, was still tied to the yacht. She hadn't unmoored it. She hadn't attempted to use it, so why was she in the water at all? Injuries, inconsistencies, and an altered cause of death. Natalie's blood alcohol content registered at 0.14% with motion sickness and pain medications in her system, an intoxicating mix that would have impaired her coordination and balance. But that wasn't what drew the most attention. It was the bruises on her arms, her legs, and her face, and the abrasion on her cheek. Forensic experts have debated for years whether these were consistent with a fall or something more violent, something that came before she entered the water. Dr. Thomas Noguchi, the original coroner, ruled her death an accidental drowning. But even he later admitted there were unanswered questions. In 2012, under new pressure, the coroner's office quietly amended her death certificate to reflect the possibility of foul play, drowning, and other undetermined factors. And still, no charges, no arrests, no grand jury. Behind the glamour, silence, power, and pain, Natalie Wood's life was marked not only by fame, but by a troubling pattern of control and silence. From a young age, she was taught to perform, to please, and to endure, lessons that shaped her adult relationships, especially with Robert Wagner, where love often overlapped with fear and restraint. On the night she vanished, yacht captain Dennis Davern claimed Wagner stopped him from calling for help. Though Wagner insists he was in shock, critics point to the 4-hour delay and the ignored witness accounts as signs of something far more disturbing. That silence wasn't new to Natalie. In 2021, her sister Lana revealed that Natalie had confided in her about being assaulted at 16 by Hollywood icon Kirk Douglas. The incident was never reported, because in the 1950s, Hollywood speaking out could destroy a young actress's career. Natalie's story is more than a mystery. It's a window into the darker realities of fame, where trauma was buried and silence became survival. The questions that won't go away. What really happened on the Splendor that night? Why were cries for help ignored? Why such a long delay before raising the alarm? And why has no one given a clear, consistent account? Natalie may have taken the full truth with her, but her legacy forces us to confront what happens when fame, silence, and unanswered questions collide. She wasn't just a star, she was a woman who deserved justice. Thank you for watching. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Click the next video for more untold stories from behind Hollywood's curtain.